Hey guys, Quinn Rediker, Police Motor Training. Today we are going to do a little comparo between the 1250 and the 1300. I just wanted to, I'm going to be giving the 1250 back here pretty soon, and I wanted to kind of get a seat of the pants and just a walkthrough while they're right next to each other. So let's do a walkthrough. Where are these things different? Obviously you can look at them visually from the front and you can see that the 1250 is a little fatter. Now that being said, measurably the crash bars are about an inch wider, the mirrors are about an inch wider from point to point, the handlebars are a half an inch wider on the 1250. So you can absolutely tell a difference. The saddlebags, I didn't do a fantastic job checking, but they seem to be approximately the same width. So that being said, I would, word of caution, I wouldn't just assume you have an extra inch when you're on the 1300, because from what I can tell, the saddlebags may or may not be narrower. So go at your own risk on that, right? So the windscreen, definitely narrower. What you can really see about the 1300 is almost everything is just narrower, and then it kind of squirts out. It's sort of what it feels like. And the windscreen is the same. Look at the difference between how narrow it is and then boom, it really bulges out. Whereas on the 1250, it's just kind of wide. Yeah, it bulges out a little bit, but the whole thing's just wider. Same thing, the mirrors, they're just kind of built into the bodywork, and then they just kind of push out a little bit. Whereas on the 1300, you have this sort of narrow, and then it just pushes out, squirts out of the side. And so this thing, call it a gimmick if you want, this piece here, this flap right here, I did ride it at freeway speeds and had it down like there and forgot all about it. And then at some point I said, oh, I forgot it has that, that option. I can grab it and flip it up if I want. So I did. And when you are at speed, that will absolutely make a difference. And then as I was sitting here, leaving it in that position and noticing, the 1250 basically lives in that position. So all things being equal, when that thing is up, I think it's probably pretty similar to this thing, just the way that it is. That being said, at slower speeds, I do feel like there's going to be more air around the motor. Yes, it's water cooled, but it probably gets a little bit more cooling benefit from that thing being movable. From a rider position, I couldn't really tell at slow speed that being up or down mattered. So, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Definitely matters at speed. So if you get a 1300, throw that thing up on the freeway, you're gonna go, wow, okay, the turbulence just drops considerably. Big difference. Wheels, they are standard black position, or black color, but the style of the wheel is different. If you'll notice, the spokes, there are less of them and they're fatter. The nice thing, of course, just is they're easier to clean. The funny thing, you know, they're black, so they don't really show up as much. Like, pardon the wheel, I haven't cleaned it, but there's a lot more little spokes in here to kind of get dirty and are hard to really get in there, and then you're jamming your fingers and you're swearing a lot. So I think this wheel is going to save you some swear words, which is kind of nice. I know they upgraded the telelever suspension system, but if you just look back to back, like the brackets, and I don't know if the diameter is bigger, but this whole setup and the way that it mounts to the frame is definitely beefier than the 1250 over here. Like this clamp here, this whole thing is not as robust as what is on the 1300. And I will say this bike definitely feels more rigid and more planted. It's just more, it just feels like it doesn't hunt much. It's very specific in its wheel placement, which is, it's noticeable, and I like it. So you have that. The crash bars are different, not only in their design, as I said, they're about an inch narrower, but they mount different also. So are they going to ultimately be determined to be beefier? You know, time will tell. But if you look at kind of where the impacts are and hitting here, it's got really big brace there, really fat brace there, really big brace there. So I feel like all the sort of the triangle of this crash bar, other than this piece out here, is pretty beefy. But the main structure of this crash bar just seems like it's going to take more hit. This is good, you know, but I feel like this part isn't really as beefy in where it mounts. There are a lot of like little sort of external welded pieces that I feel like could be a weak point with this one. And as you can see, there's grind marks here, and this thing hits here on, I think on the other side. Yeah, they're already hitting into the bodywork because somebody, I don't know whose bike this is, they must have dropped it a bunch. Oh wait, it's my bike, and I guess I've dropped it a bunch. So I will be curious to see how this holds up. One thing that is cool with this one is it has these little rubber pieces here that sort of protect the engine, the head, the cylinder head, right here. Well, really the valve cover, but ultimately I think it's going to protect a little bit better. Okay, what else? Let's talk about controls. So I want you to notice these are more like, and I said they're about a half an inch narrower. These handlebars are more like traditional bars. They clamp on here. I can rotate them, in which these in particular, I rolled them up a little bit. The levers are separate from the throttle pieces and the brake, or not brake, but this grip and this whole sort of control cluster, so that, as you can see, there's a gap here. There wasn't a gap here when I got this, but I was able to just take this off with 2 little torque screws and then loosen this whole piece and roll my lever up and in. I like my levers in because I get more leverage this way. Essentially thinking about it like, instead of you're pulling your lever in here, you're pulling your lever in over here, so you literally have more leverage. I also like, though, when my levers are in, I do this with all my race bikes, my dirt bikes, the lever isn't so close to the end, so the odds of you bending or breaking your lever is less. The primary purpose here, however, was for fit and feel. I felt the 1300s kind of, the levers came stock a little rotated down, and I wasn't a fan of that. So I moved both of them in. I have more leverage, but now my fingers sit all on this portion of the lever. These levers are a little bit more V'd out than the 1250s, which we'll see here. These, just in my experience, these seem to roll a little smoother. But if you notice, they're connected here, and I believe you cannot, and don't quote me on this, but I don't think you can actually rotate your levers in relation to the bar. I think they're pinned, in which case the position is the position. Now, I like this position, but it is what it is. If you notice, these handlebars are totally different. They're not bolted on the way that the 1300 is, and they're not adjustable. Now, I think you can, you can get different things to move them around, but you can't ultimately play around with bar position like you can with a 1300. So I'm a huge fan of this. Now, these have bar risers in here, which you could take out. You could even put taller bar risers in here. You could get different bars that have a bigger sweep. Sweep pulls your bars back, or it'll have more rise, which can raise them up. So very easy and arguably pretty inexpensive to make an adjustment if you're really tall or if you're shorter, or just depending on your body position when you ride your motorcycle and what you're comfortable with. This setup, for me, I was pretty darn excited because the world is open. I mean, GS bars will mount right onto this thing, and there's a world of different kind of bar bends with a GS. So I like the user-friendly nature of this setup for sure, compared to the 1250, which is just kind of, it is what it is, and it's this big sort of hunk of handlebar on here. So there's that. As far as the friction zone on the BMWs, if you're familiar, I'm a big fan of making an adjustment to these things where you're actually backing out this little piston, this little metal piece that pushes in the master cylinder for the clutch, and it makes the friction zone somewhere right here instead of somewhere out here. The 1300 is the same. It comes with the friction zone pretty far out, but the adjustment is the same on the 1300 as it is here on the 1250. So when you get a 1300, I've already adjusted mine, which is really nice. I just want to mention also, if you look at the brakes, now this one says Brembo on it, and then this one here says BMW. Now, I know in the dynamic package there is an upgraded, and I don't know if it's a caliper or if it's a master cylinder or if it's the entire braking system, but my understanding is there is an upgraded brake package that comes on the 1300 as an option. And I don't believe I've experienced that yet. As it sits right now, the 1300 brakes are fine, but the 1250s are stronger. And I don't know if that's simply because this bike's relatively new, but I mean, I've ridden this thing a dozen times. You know, The tire's pretty chewed up on the edges. I've put quite a bit of time on this bike, and I will say that when I hopped on the 1250, I was sort of surprised and dismayed at how much stronger the front brakes, the initial bite was. So we'll see, time will tell. Maybe that's a pad change, maybe that's a break-in issue, maybe this is dynamic packages and that's not, and so when I get the dynamic 1300, it'll be apples to apples, who knows. I do want to mention, if you ride a BMW, and here's the thing with this 1250 platform and really the body molding and all this stuff is not very different than it was back in 2007 or 8 with the 1200. So I've been riding these things since then, and riding this 2022 feels the same to me as riding a 2009. I'm comfortable on it. When I sit on this bike, my knees, see this pocket here? My knees go right into this pocket. This is my pocket. And on my city bike for Ventura PD, I put longboard tape on here. So it was like kind of neoprene padded all through in here. And I just lived here and it felt great. Now I'm on the 1300, and because of the way this whole thing goes, I don't have that anymore. I'm just floating out in space, which initially I was kind of perturbed about that. I also, and I'm just going to complain here, this is not a smooth piece on the right side. I have this piece here, and I wear knee pads, but now my knee pads, because I'm not pushing straight up against anything, I've taken my knee pad and literally rotated it to the side because I know I'm going to keep moving over this knob, and it's uncomfortable. So, you know, that's my riding style. That's a me problem, and probably a lot of you won't even encounter that or tell me I'm crazy, and that's fine. But this is just a very, very different proposal. So if you are used to these little cutouts where you feel like, okay, now I know where I live, you know, it's this position that you're comfortable with, you don't have that here. It'll take some getting used to. Now, that being said, one thing that is different between these bikes is the tank. If you look at the seat and the tank, this is pretty steep, okay? So when I sit up here, I'm kind of like stuck in this space. On the 1300, however, the seat flows right into this far more ramped tank angle. So when I sit on this and I'm hammering the brakes, I'm like sliding up on this thing. So I sit quite a bit closer to the front of this motorcycle simply because of the design of this tank. Now, you might be wondering what this little thing is. It says corner coach. This is a motocross piece. It's basically a seat bump or seat hump. And the goal with these things is ultimately to give you a reference point as to where on the seat you should sit. And in this case, it's not as imperative as a motocross seat or a dirt bike seat that's much longer. That's really what this is designed for and how they market it. I wanted to put it here because I noticed the further forward I went, the more comfortable this bike seemed to be at performing. So I've got this on here just to kind of test out, because I don't have muscle memory as far as position goes. Now, yes, when I hammer the brakes, it just puts me up on this thing, and really there's nowhere else to be. I don't have to think to be there. Gravity and forces just sort of put that there. But so that's what that is. On this bike, I have to make more of a conscious effort to really try and keep myself forward. I say that to myself, forward, 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 when I ride this bike. And having these are reference points for me to know, okay, I'm in a good position. I don't have those reference points, but this sort of answers that for me and really ultimately puts me further forward than the 1250 does. The display is the same. They look the same, they work the same, the adjusters are the same, this wheel is the same, nothing has changed there. This has quick reference buttons, this has, or favorites buttons, this has favorites buttons also, but you know, it's all the same stuff in that respect. Now, we talked about the windscreen. Look at the, so when we're sitting, this is your vantage point. Look how narrow that is, right? You're like, man, this is very different compared to this. And let's just put them all the way up. Okay. Low fuel, as many of you guys that do rodeos know, less weight is the right answer. So this thing's 32 miles to empty, so I'm not slashing a big heavy tank of gas around. So here we are with the windscreen. Here's about where you would sit. You can see the coverage and what that looks like. Now let's do that on the 1300. So let's put this up. And you notice it's pretty narrow, and then it fattens up quite a bit. So back to back, we'll have to talk about wind protection. I will say when the screens are down, I like this better because it's less intrusive. So that's great. But ultimately, I think this one's probably got you covered on wind protection. But if you also notice though, this thing cuts in and now you have these wings. If you look over here, you have these wings off the mirror, but this windscreen really pops out. So this is kind of accomplishing the same thing that these were. So I think for all intents and purposes, this bike has less pieces. So it's more kind of well thought through and put together and engineered. Remember, as I'm talking about, this platform, as far as the bodywork and everything else, seems, in my experience, seat of the pants, to be very similar over the course of the last 15 years. Other than, yes, the mechanics, they've increased and improved, CCs and water cooling and wet clutch and all that stuff. But the tank never felt any different. But definitely you can see the girth here compared to here. This bike just feels smaller. You do have this cool little compartment here. It's pretty shallow, but I keep the key there. I don't have any compartments up here. We'll see if my other one will have that. I don't know. But this bike, of course, the 1250 does have these little compartments, which is cool. Just want to talk saddlebags really quick. Here's the latch here. Somebody asked me, hey, what's the size difference, like volume? Well, they seem similar, but they're designed different. So what I want to first point out is, I did some loose measuring, top to bottom, and they're about the same. That is approximately the same. But if you notice, this is more sort of just, it's not quite, but it's kind of more straight up and down, where this one has a bit more bulge. It seems fatter as far as the saddlebag goes. Now, the way it opens is different. The latch is down here, and the latch is here. So first thing you'll notice when you pop these open is it has this component built in. Essentially, it's kind of got this hard plastic piece that hinders your ability to slide things full volume all the way into it compared to this. See, this is just a smooth drop. So the bag that comes with this will not fit in here. It just doesn't. But like I said, I think the overall volume is greater. If you look at the width of this one seems a little bit wider, right? So it's a little fatter at the top. I don't think that's translating into the bike being necessarily fatter, but just something, food for thought, right? So here's the rear view, and here's the rear view. The mufflers are different. The actual header portion of the pipes seem like they're about the same. The foot pegs are the same. The rear brake, so they've made changes. Like, you cannot take this brake and put it on the 1300. I tried, it does not work. So if you know any of my riding, I like lower brake levers, just so I don't actuate the rear brake on accident when I'm counterbalancing. I cannot take the custom brake lever that I have and put it on the 1300. But the cool news is, and you're gonna see here, this is a very custom setup. These are not normal pegs. These are peg risers, and this is a BMW accessory. This is a fully adjustable rear brake lever. That is also a BMW accessory. Those are things you'll be able to order if you are somebody that, so these you can flip around and make them lowering pegs or raise them up. So that's kind of cool. And the same with this, you can lower this piece, or you can simply rotate that around and now it's tall. So whatever you want. And those will be available through BMW. So if it turns out you want to lower your pegs, we'll have the SKU numbers for you to be able to do that. It's pretty easy to do. It's pretty intuitive. I just want to talk about seats also. This seat is adjustable only in the front. So it has a high-low setting. Let's just do that really quick, just so you can kind of see, because they are different. So here's the seat. It has this piece here, right? So, pardon me. So you can pull this off. As you look, it has an H here, and I flip it around, it has a L. It's hard to see, but there's the L right here. Right here. H and L. H for high, L for low. So we're in the high mode. So we're just gonna sit it here and we're clipped in. And then the seat right here goes into those portions, and that's that. That is your tall seat, okay? So that's all you're gonna do with this seat. Now, on your 1300, hold on. On your 1300, the setup is different. You're gonna notice two things that are different here. Same exact setup here, has an H, you flip it around, it's got the L, so that's the same. But here's what's new on the seat that's significant, is it has these. Now this is in a low position, and you can put the seat on, put these down, or you wanna raise that seat up, you put it in this position. And I'll tell you, the difference is like an inch. It matters. It definitely raises the seat, but what I like about it is, it takes your normal seat that comes with this, sort of the mid-length seat or mid-height seat, and it makes it far more adjustable than the mid-height seat on this bike. That is the tall seat that I run as an optional seat through BMW. This is the standard seat. I'm going to be getting a tall seat, but I will say that I believe, at least seat of the pants, this in the high position is as high or higher than the tall seat in the tall position on the 1250. So I have, and I do it because I use a lot of legs when I'm pushing, which funny enough, I don't have to do quite as much on this bike, but the peg to seat distance with a standard seat in high position is greater or similar to the relationship between the peg and the seat on the tall seat. So kind of cool. So I think where I'm going with that is, I believe this motorcycle is going to be more adjustable for people that have different height requirements. So the center stand on this motorcycle is different. It is taller. When I originally put these bikes back to back, I thought, man, this motorcycle sits taller than that one. Well, it does on the center stand, because this center stand is simply taller. It almost feels like it's about an inch taller. And what you'll also notice is, if you ever center stand the 1250, this is what you're pushing down on. Look at the length of this thing. This is what you're pushing down on right here. Now, look at the 1300. If you'll notice, I tried to push it down from here when it was just up, and I was like, what is going on? I cannot do it. Oh, they have this extra length here. Now you're pushing down on this. They've given you more leverage because you have a longer stand, and I didn't really realize, why did they design it like that? I thought they were just trying to make it help sort of tuck it away. Well, yes, it's to tuck it away, but because the overall length of this thing that you're stepping on is greater. So the bike definitely sits taller, and where you notice it is when you're taking it off the center stand. So this bike is, I don't want to say harder, but you got to rock it quite a bit more, really more purposefully push on it to get it off the center stand compared to the 1250. When you get off the 1300, having center stood it, and then you get on this thing and you get it off the center stand, you're like, wow, that was easy. Top box, here's the switch. And now I'm in the top box of the 1250. Now, 1300. Here is the switch. And here's the top box. This piece here is plastic. This whole thing is molded in, whereas that is a separate aluminum piece. So my understanding is that was a weight saving thing, and pretty cool. So clearly they're trying to make this bike lighter and racier, and I say racier in just from a performance standpoint, not that you're going to go race this thing around or anything. Let me shut that off. Rear tire on this is a 190, so that tells me a lot about where they're trying to bolster this motorcycle's performance. It has, I think, 8 to 10 more horsepower than this one, and like I said, you can feel that mid to top. This bike just, as I say, it has more legs. It just keeps going. So I think in a pursuit, or ultimately clicking through the gears to go after a violator, you're gonna notice this thing it's just snappy. It just really gets going right out of the hole, though. Not as grunty as this so far in my experience. This rear tire is a 180, which is great. But 190, of course, is higher performance, fatter. It's a fatter wheel.